Hello and welcome to Media Dialogues with Storyboard18. I am Delshad Irani and I have a global CMO in the hot seat with me today. Emily Ketchen, who is the Global Chief Marketing Officer and VP of Lenovo's Intelligent Devices Group and International Markets, is with us. In this dialogue with Emily, she will help us unravel the global media and marketing trends that are disrupting how brands and businesses engage with consumers. These trends and complex media times are also making the CMO's job a lot harder, but exciting as well at the same time. So on that note, hello and welcome to CNBC-TV18, Emily. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We are seeing this real sort of wave of energy and technology and talent coming through out of India. So what is your view on the India market right now as a global marketing leader?
I think we are super excited about the market in India. So, it is predicted that by 2026, India will be the third largest market in the world. And so there's this tremendous energy, as you said, and enthusiasm around the market. Importantly, I believe, is the fact that 35% of the population in India today is under 34 years old. And if you think about our business at Lenovo as a technology company, we're super, super interested in our marketing capabilities to Gen Z, which is a huge part of that cohort, right? They are digital natives. They've never been in a world without technology. They have a propensity for technology. They are interested in technology. So for us, it becomes an incredibly important market. And there are areas around premium, which are very important in India, made in India, which are very important in India, sustainability, which is very important in India. And so the combination of those factors make it, I think, a very exciting and important market for Lenovo.
Let me just get into some of the points that you mentioned on sustainability or some of the other sort of levers that you're looking at. Can you give me a few examples on how Lenovo is leveraging that? How are you leveraging, again, this, this energy, this, the talent emerging out of the country, be it in a function like marketing or, for the Lenovo brand and business in general?
Yeah, well, I think let's just pick up on the thread of sustainability for half a minute. So if you think about Gen Z, what's incredibly important to them is authenticity. And we know this because, for example, when I came to Lenovo, we had many, many areas of insights. We did not have all of those insights together. And so we established an Insight Center of Excellence, pulling together all of the research, all of the understanding, and actually setting up a global panel of Gen Zers to be able to understand what's important to them. So we talked about authenticity, we talked about sustainability. What's the proof point? So a number of our products are made sustainably. We have an incredible sustainable set of packaging. So those are the kinds of examples that you want to put in front of an audience for whom that is very important, because brands have to be able to back up those kinds of claims. And I think also brands have to be careful not to step into what we now call greenwashing, right? So you have to stick to what's very authentic about your brand and point to the examples that you can. We spend a lot of time doing research with Gen Z, understanding their points of view. Another example that I would give you is, I'm not a Gen Z. I have 2 Gen Zs in my house. They're very vocal, my daughters, they keep me straight. But by the same token, when we produce creative at the global level and at the level of the country, say for example in India, we test that creative quantitatively for its resonance and its congruence with Gen Z, with a Gen Z audience. They're the ones telling us, I understand the ad, I like the ad, it appeals to me from an emotion perspective. Again, I'm not a Gen Zer, it would not be right for me to make that call. So I think that's another really important proof point to being able to communicate with Gen Z from where they are, and so that it helps, they understand, and they're a part of that conversation and part of that communication. It's really important for brands to be authentic in that context.
The marketer's job today, the CMO's job today is very, very tough. It's a complex media landscape. Add to that other layers of complexity. So tell me a little bit about how the marketer's job has really changed. Because we're not talking about just advertising anymore, right? We're talking about, chief growth and marketing officers, and just the designations alone are changing so rapidly. So tell me, what's your view on how the role has changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the role of a chief marketing officer has absolutely changed and morphed over time, and at the speed of, let's say, the F1, right? The twists and the turns that takes, particularly important to us as we partner with the F1. So it's a good analogy for how quickly things can change. I think you said it very well. A baseline or foundational set of expectations for a chief marketing officer is that they know how to produce and curate and get out into the world great brand stories and great storytelling, fueled by great creativity, fueled by great insights. But boy, do we have a lot more that we have to do. And most of that, I think, is anchored to two different areas. One is really the use of data and insights, and clearly data to fuel your marketing, but also to understand the efficacy of your marketing and how your marketing is performing in the marketplace. The other piece, which is one that is one of my favorites to talk about, is the role of technology in the role of the chief marketing officer. So you had better know technology inside and out. Easier maybe for me because I live in a technology company. I am inspired and I'm very stimulated by technology. But when you think about the technology stack, so the marketing technology stack, the sales technology stack, how does all of that come together? How do you connect the conversations you're having with your customers, whether it's B2C, the business to consumer frame, or B2B in the business to business frame, at scale off of your website, off of a value exchange, using something like account-based marketing? That is all technology influenced. It's all technology driven. It's super, super complicated. You might have a legacy system. You might need a brand new system. You know, we've talked about things like the deprecation of the third-party cookie. That seems like a very small thing, but it's very important in the context of how do you remarket in a world that is very much permission-based. So I think all of those different factors mean that, yes, you have to be a creative storyteller. You have to understand the role of data. You also have to be able to infuse that with technology. But I love what you said, and I talk about this a lot, that the role of the chief marketing officer has really moved to become the role of the chief growth officer. And what do I mean when I say that? What I mean is, for example, you will have seen AI coming into everything, right? We can't have a conversation without touching on that. But specifically for Lenovo, whose vision is to bring smarter technology for all to life, how are we thinking about AI in the context of the AI PC? Putting AI at your fingertips, the job is to create the market for that. That's the chief growth officer, right? Is how do we work with our organizations, our technology, our storytelling to actually create a market for those particular products that are coming in the future.
Absolutely. We'll get on AI in depth in a little bit, Emily.
Sure.
But let me just touch upon something that you said about brands curating stories, and I mean, essentially the idea is looking at brands as curators of content. But don't you also think that perhaps the conversation should shift to how brands can be curators of attention?
I think it's a great question. I think that really what you're talking about is what has truly become the attention economy. If you think about people who are scrolling all the time, all of the competition for your attention, one of the things that we have found that works very well for us is to tell very compelling stories around, for example, technology for good. So we have a program called Work for Humankind, and Work for Humankind really spotlights area of how we take technology and we use it for good. So we had a global program. We've taken that program forward to North America, to China, and to India. So in India, how do we tell a story that is very, very relevant for this particular market? Again, to your point, breaking through and gaining attention. And so what we did is we highlighted last year, which was the universal year in India of the millet, right? The United Nations talked about the resurgence of these ancient grains, the value of these ancient grains. And we, together with the community of Kantalur in Kerala, and our use of technology, along with the local university, came up with a program to be able to use technology to help farmers increase the level of millet production by being able to look and see, for example, where is the potential weather pattern? When would I want to water more, right? Millet is on a very, very quick growth cycle. And so that's a great way to talk about how we as a brand become part of a community, use technology for good. work with a university, work with local farmers, and you're spotlighting something that's actually quite different and unique, but you're going to gain more attention because it's locally relevant. It's not some story about something that's happening somewhere else. It's actually germane to our country, our nation, and what we're putting forward. At the end of the day, I'm super excited to tell you we won a SABRE award for it, a SABRE Gold. That isn't why we do the work, right? We do the work because it is very foundational to our brand. Again, we believe in smarter technology for all. That means every country, every community, we're in 180 markets. How do we make things relevant in those markets to the very question you asked, how do we break through and keep and hold people's attention?
So it's not just ads, it's acts as well. So it's very interesting to me, Emily, you said something which I thought was very interesting not too long ago. You said that CMOs are the voice of the customer, and what I'm hearing when you mention the Gen Z example or how you go about customizing and changing how you tell stories and making them relevant for local markets. Elaborate on, if you can, elaborate on this idea of the CMO being the voice of the customer.
That part of it is very, very simple. Our job in an organization is always to represent the customer. If I don't represent the voice of the customer, who will? And so specifically, I believe that marketing is also very much in service of sales. You might find some marketers who believe the only thing that's important is perhaps this facet over here or that facet over there. I actually think you have to be able to enable a sales organization. Your job is to help them, is to have told those stories so that customers have a natural set of opinions about your brand before a salesperson perhaps calls on them. So when we talked earlier about things like account-based marketing, that's all about priming the pump for your customers so that your sales organization can walk in and get a warm lead or a lead that has already been, let's say, BANT qualified, and that's an acronym for, sort of is the budget there, is the accountability there, all of the different elements, right? So I think if you're a great CMO, you're listening, you're calibrating, and you are always the voice of that customer so that you can advocate. One great example would be we've infused quite a bit of our insight into the product production and the product life cycle discussion, right? So we're actually sitting down with our business unit and taking customer insights into how we build and put forth our next set of products. Super important, right? So then you can hearken back to that when customers are saying, that's why that feature is there, because it's so helpful to me as a customer. Again, there's many different ways to express that, but it's so simple and it's so important for marketers to never lose sight of the fact that you are the representative of the customer in your organization, and that can be from acquisition all the way through to loyalty.
Emily, of course, there's a lot of talk about AI. There's this frenzy around AI. AI is everywhere. It's not new. It's, there's been ML and all of that in everything that we do. But tell me, how do you make sense of all this frenzy and scale, and how do you also then sort of separate the signal from the noise for Lenovo?
We have been working with AI for a very long time, and so it is not necessarily new to us. And I think the new news around AI is really this step into generative AI and what that means for things like large language models, large action models. So we've recently announced a $1 billion investment in R&D that is really geared to AI. We are thinking about how we bring AI, again, to your fingertips. How is it that we will infuse AI to make things much different for you in your experience in terms of how you actually spend time on device and on compute? So you've probably heard quite a bit of technology going from the device to the cloud. The whole idea with this new set of capabilities is that you'll be able to actually do quite a bit more on device. Some great examples of that are things like you go into a meeting, and I remember early days, my job in an agency was always to recalibrate the meeting notes for the client and to capture all the actions and all those kinds of things. Well, imagine today that can happen for you automatically, transcribed, ready to go, notes are ready to go. That is epic. That is super useful and super helpful. And so making AI, to your point, out of the frenzy and into the tangible, the marketer's job is to create that market, but it's to simplify. Why would you want AI? Why would it be there for you? What are the features and the benefits that you will enjoy? So that's a great example of it. Another great example is simultaneous translation. So if you're in a meeting and you're on a device and you're on a screen, and that's something that Lenovo can bring, people right into your office and vice versa, you can be having a conversation in 3 or 4 different languages. Simultaneous translation allows you to have those conversations in real time, picking up all the cultural nuances, all the different things that are important, and it's right there enabled by AI. That's extraordinary. You'll also see lots of different examples of how AI can help with creativity. It's going to be super interesting to see where that goes, right? Text to image, fascinating. And I think those are all of the kinds of things that you as a marketer want to create that market for. And again, for us, it's about differentiating the way that Lenovo brings that AI to your fingertips in the market versus anyone else who's out there. So taking the fad, understanding it is not a fad. AI is absolutely here to stay. And I think it's super important to understand that. The other thing that I would say is a marketing organization has a lot of responsibility to think about AI in the context of the organization. So this is a bit different. This is not the story that I would tell you about the device. This is the fact that we have taken it upon ourselves in the marketing organization with all of our colleagues across the company to set up an AI council and an AI committee. So we are working with our legal teams. We're working with our security teams. We're working with the marketing organization to do a couple of things. One, what is the ethical and responsible use of AI, and how do we do that as a corporation?
Defining that to
Exactly
start with.
right. What are those guardrails? And being open and public about it, right? Talking about it so people are learning and being trained and learning how to use it. What are the acceptable ways we would use AI? Are we going to work with OpenAI? Are we going to go to Midjourney? What are those different examples that we will use, and how do we do that properly? Getting the licenses, getting the sign-ons, doing that in a way that is additive to your corporation, but it's a safe way for the company to learn. And then rolling out a training program, which we have. We have a multi-layer training program specifically for our marketers around what is AI in the context of marketing, how will you use it, how will you be trained, and then all of a sudden, people in your organization are gaining in their careers, right? They're learning, they're able to talk about it. One of the most gratifying examples was we had a couple of folks in our organization who peeled out and said, oh, we want to be the ones to learn how to do the prompts better. And they took the master training program and went off themselves and started a whole nother community to talk about how you will do prompt engineering, because that's going to be so much of what it is. And then what are the greater impacts of AI to marketing? So there's the market to your customers, but also the responsibility we have to think about how we're using AI in the context of our own discipline, expertise, and métier, right, which is marketing.
You answered some part of my next question, Emily, but given all of this change that AI is bringing, and again, I was talking about the scale and the frenzy, especially with Gen AI, what are you most concerned about as a marketer when it comes to the widespread use of Gen AI, whether it's within the organization or with consumers and customers that you're seeing? What are you most concerned about? We talk about jobs all the time.
Yeah.
And that of course is a major concern. But what is it? What is it for you?
I think from my perspective, I'm inclined to see the opportunity around AI, actually. I think in terms of concern, it's really important, as we talked about, to use it the right way. So I think that that's probably the most important part, is to be open, to be transparent, to be clear about what makes sense and what doesn't. And then also, I think the creation of that value proposition around AI and what that can do for you in terms of productivity, in terms of being more secure, in terms of how you might use your device, is what I would say it would be for customers. So I think there's kind of two pieces to that: the organization itself and how you use it in the right ways, and then making sure you're translating that value proposition to your customers.
And the good thing is that unlike social media, where we waited 10, 15 years to bring in all these guardrails and regulations and all of that, people have really sort of been a lot more proactive when it comes to AI, whether it's brands, governments, citizens even, for that matter. Are you seeing that as a very helpful way of viewing how AI is changing and reshaping our lives?
I think so. I feel like you've said it really well. People are leaning into AI, right? They want to have the conversation. They want to be trained. They want to be thinking about what are the policies. Their futures. Mm-hmm. What are the policies? What are the regulations? I do think there's a little bit of fear around, gosh, it might take parts of my job. I don't think that's right. I think if you're not doing your job, maybe, right? But I think if you're on top of it, and if you're thinking about how it will help and enhance, look, it's going to change things. Change is the constant, and you have to be willing to lean into that. Now, technology companies are fairly adept at that because we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving. We're marketing things that may not actually be super tangible in someone's mind just yet because it's the future, right? Technology continues to change society for the better. It's one of the reasons that we spend time talking about technology for good, but I think it's a really interesting moment in time, and you do see everybody leaning into this. It's here to stay. If you're not thinking about it as a brand, if you don't have an AI council, if your marketers don't know how to think about AI, that's a problem. You need to be moving along and accepting and owning it. It was very interesting this year at the Cannes Festival that I had the good fortune to be at in June. You know, last year AI was just coming into the topic area, and what was
after 2 years of metaverse and all,
and all kinds of things, right? What was great was you were starting to see results of programs that people had used AI to enhance or to be a part of. And it was super interesting to see brands talk about that, whereas it was a concept in 2023. At this year's festival in 2024, it was absolutely on the main stage, absolutely something people were talking about, giving examples of how it worked. And I think a lot of the areas that were awarded included, elements of AI. So you're absolutely right. It's here to stay.
Yeah, it went from ideas to actual impact that you were seeing everywhere. Thank you, Emily. It was lovely chatting with you.
Lovely chatting with you as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.